frontline family members and loved ones had experienced, I would have folded my hand. But what Stevante said, as he asked me to be the MC, was he wanted to focus on transforming what was a horrific moment in their lives or a period of a horrific set of moments into power. And I thought that was really important. And so I agreed to do it, and I hope that's why all of you are here as well. We don't want to just dwell on the negative. We want to acknowledge the negative things that happen, but we want to focus on the positive. So I'm going to begin by giving a very brief summary of my bio. I'm going to hand the microphone down so that everyone individually can introduce themselves. We have a series of questions that we've presented to the panel, and then we want to open it up for Q&A from the audience. Everybody okay with all that? All right, I like this group. So my background is I'm an attorney here in Sacramento. I was trained initially after law school by John Burris, who many people know. My mentor, my personal mentor, was Johnny Cochran, the late Johnny Cochran in Los Angeles. I grew up in South Central LA. Very proud of that fact. I've been a Sacramento resident. I see some hoo-hoos out in the audience on South Central. Interestingly, one of the persons up here on this panel and I met as high school students. He's from Stockton, California. I was from Los Angeles, and we met as 15, 16-year-olds, and we've been friends over all these years. So the journey has been amazing. The only thing that's really relevant, besides the fact that today I'm the head of Ben Crump Law here in Sacramento. Ben Crump is my law partner. I've never worked with a person who I respect more in terms of what he's doing on behalf of our community. We're not only trying to win cases, we're trying to change policy, and we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. But the other thing I'm very proud of is that my family and I used to have a radio show here in town called Family Matters that came on KDEE. Thank you, thank you. And I miss not being able to do that show. We were able to bring the stories of our community to our community, unfiltered, unedited. Jay King and before him, Aubrey Stone allowed us to do our thing when it came to KDEE and Family Matters. It's a great resource for our community to have the Sacramento Observer and to have KDEE. So with that said, I want to pass the mic first to my left, your right, and everyone's going to take just a couple of minutes to kind of introduce themselves and why they're here today in terms of today's panel. Let me start right here. Curtis Carroll.
How's everybody doing? My name is Curtis Carroll, but everybody calls me Wall Street. They call me Walsh. So briefly, I have been home for about 4 months now. I was incarcerated for almost 27 years. I went to prison when I was a teenager. I am here today because me and this fine gentleman right here, you guys MC, met about 6, 7 years ago while I was still incarcerated. He was up late one night taking care of some business and saw a story about a kid in prison who was teaching people in prison about finance. He reached out, we got connected, we've been together ever since. Currently, I'm in the process of building a finance program that's designed to educate the community about financial education from an emotional perspective. And I'm here today to lend my support to these fine women and to the community in any way I can today. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Sacramento, for the invite. Honored to be here. My name is Stephanie Hatton. I am from Stockton, California. My son, Antoine Pierre Barris Sr., was murdered by our police department, July 15, 2020. Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Hersey. Son was Sacramento County Jail. Last year, he died July. And from them not giving medical treatment in there, they just let him lay there and die. 34 years old. There he is right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Denise Friday Hall, and they normally call me Mama D. My son, Kobe Friday, was executed in Stockton, California August the 16th, 2016. Because we turn our pain into our purpose, we have an organization called Loyalty and Family CTF Incorporated. And what we do is we help unserved communities. And the community that we serve is Kentfield, Hayward, and Oakland. We have 3 locations that we distribute backpacks, sack lunches, food to the homeless, the unhoused. And we also have a toy drive every year, and we give toys to children that normally wouldn't have a toy. I'll tell you more about it later. Thank you.
Let's do this. Let's give everybody who shares a round of applause. I mean, I'm sitting up here getting teary-eyed already. I'm not too much of a man to let my emotions show. We're talking about our kids being assassinated. This ain't no joke. And so the reality of it is, let your emotions flow, give recognition and acknowledgement to each one of these folks who are sharing their story, because it's touching my heart. I hope it's touching yours as well. Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Latanya Andrews. My son's name Marshall Miles was killed 2018. SAC sheriff. They suffocated him, and had him hogtied at the same time, and tried to tell them he couldn't breathe. They just said, "Well, you talking?" I'm just trying to tell you I can't breathe. So it was about 4 or 5 officers on top of him. And they was kneeing him in the back, and he wasn't doing anything wrong. So they just all left him in the cell to die. That's exactly what happened. He died.
Hi, my name is Paula Anderson. My daughter was 3-year-old Azalea Anderson. She was killed due to community gun violence in the living room of our home while we were getting ready for bed. The gentlemen that were involved, only one person was charged, with murdering her, but there was more than one person involved. But something like that shouldn't happen within our community. My 3-year-old daughter should be able to get ready for bed,
Amen.
But that's just what it is when you deal, when you live where you live, I don't know. That's it.
My name is Jennifer Redmond. I am the mother of Soraya Jade Redmond. Soraya was 19 when she was murdered on September 25th, 2020, while in an apartment watching a movie. And the people that called themselves friends failed her. No one spoke for her. And the persons that took our daughter's life, they took our life, and they took my only daughter.
Take your time, sweetheart.
Hi, I am the daughter of Sharano Stingley. And I'm here to tell his story. My dad was murdered trying to get home to me. He was on his way to my house and knocked on the wrong door. He thought he was at my house, very familiar to where I live. He was knocking at the door, communicating to the door, telling them to open up, that he was home. They called the police. The police got there and went straight to attacking my dad. They pulled the hood over his head, hit him in the head with flashlights, tased him in the throat, beat him while he's screaming that he wasn't resisting and that calling my name. I'm here to fight the fight that he was trying to fight to get home to me.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maureen Miles, and I'm the sister of Marshall Miles, who was killed in Sacramento County Jail. And this is my mom, Latanya, right here. She guys told you what happened and everything, so I'll pass the mic.
Before I tell my story, even tell who I am, I just need to say, since I'm the last one on the desk, you all don't look like what you've been through. My name is Broderick Huggins. I wasn't supposed to be on the panel, but I'm here to preach tonight. My friend, Attorney Harris, drafted me to be a part of this panel. We've been friends since 16 years old. I think that's about 50 years. But
15 years ago.
15 years ago. My son was murdered by the Alameda County Sheriff, 2013, the night before Easter Sunday morning. We initiated a case that some of the attorneys were not interested in pursuing because of some mitigating circumstances. That decision was made before the DA's report was put out, which did not expose the fact that before my son was shot, they stopped him in Oakland around the Fruitvale section of Oakland. They stopped him for expired tag, and the situation escalated, was exacerbated and consummated with his murder. He wouldn't get out the car because he wanted to know why they had stopped him. They wouldn't tell him about the tail light. Ask him to get out the car, and he wanted to know why they wouldn't tell him. Within 4 minutes, four officers rushed in, they tried to pull him out of the car. The officer got in on the other side of the car and started beating him with a flashlight, time after time, as he pleaded for his life and for them to stop hitting him. They pulled the gun and he took off, and they shot him 13 times. And there's still no resolution to this day.
Let me say something before I hand it to Stevante. Please give him applause. We're being hunted like animals out here. And it doesn't matter whether you're a bishop or a bookie, you get treated exactly the same way. Our community has to be aware that any one of these women and men up here, it could be you. 26 years, I call this man Mandela. He went to jail at 17 years old. We have people who've done horrific things who've been in and out. First of all, they don't go for what he was charged with. The whole law had to change before we could get him out. I know that the law changed with Stefan because Stevante and I worked on it. This is something that we're so happy that you're here, and Nan is taking a positive, strong stand on behalf of our community. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I want to hand the mic last but not least to my friend, my client, my nephew, my brother, Stevante Clark.
Thank you, Attorney Harris. You guys know Stevante Clark, his story. Hopefully we all know the story of Stevante Clark. My unarmed brother assassinated, executed in my grandmother's backyard, shot at 20 times, 8 shots hitting him in the back. You know, each bullet possessed the fatal capacity, which means each bullet independently killed my brother. He was only 22 years old, a father of 2 sons. He was shot in the midst of 22 seconds. The officers claimed his iPhone was a gun. They said he was shooting at them with his iPhone. You know, recently, you all are probably aware that I ran into the cop who killed my brother at the Kings Arena. You know, I never seen this man. And the message is clear, you know, for the Sacramento Kings and for the SAC PD is, you know, our lives obviously don't matter as much as they claim they do. You know, anytime you can kill somebody and do something so bad where law must be created and you're not held accountable, then you can go work the playoffs for an organization that has used your brother's names numerous times for organizations and all types of stuff, is a spit in the life and legacy of Stevante Clark. How dare you use my brother's name, then hire the same cops who killed him to work your playoff game? That's all I gotta say, Attorney Harris.
So we started with kind of where we are. We have a series of questions. Any panelist who wants to answer the question, we're going to leave it open for you to answer as many or as few of the questions as you want. But I want to say this because it matters. Now, I'm tired of hearing everybody grab the matters term for their little BS. I'm not going to use the term because I'm in the house of God and I'm going to be respectful of that. But there are a whole lot of organizations and people out here now taking matters when, what is it? They just can't stand the fact that we embrace Black Lives Matter, and it means something to our community. You can't water that down. It's not the only lives that matter, but Black Lives Matter. So I get a little edgy when I hear people talk about this matters, that matters, the other matters. But the last thing I want to say is this. We're beginning as a community to expect to be treated a certain way. Let me say it again. Latest case that came to me yesterday was a middle school girl, 90 pounds or less, soaking wet, about 5'2", was thrown to the ground with a knee in her neck by the SRO at her school. He said he was breaking up a fight and that's the only way he could do it. I see other kids who fight and they don't have knees in the neck. But here's the worst part. She said today that I guess it was justified. I mean, I was fighting, so I guess the officer did what the officer had to do. I said, boy, that's a bad situation for us as a community when we start believing that we deserve to be treated this way. We got Joseph Mann, who was shot in Del Paso Heights, 17 bullets in less than a minute. Dejan Flanall, who was killed in this part of town, some of you remember that name, had no weapon on him, was shot and killed, assassinated. This is an epidemic in our community. So with that said, we don't want to make it all heavy and doom and gloom. These are human beings who still live within their family and within our community. The first thing we want you to do, if you will, can you share with us, Bishop and I did this earlier, something from your loved one's life that still brings a smile to your face just in memory. We were talking about Bishop Huggins' son I knew since he was a little bitty kid, and I used to see he and Bishop stand next to each other, and they looked just alike. And I knew Broderick when he was 15, 16, so as I saw his son grow, I was just amazed at how much they favored each other. He still lives, smiled just like his daddy. What is it about your loved one that we may, now look at you smile, I see one smile already, a little smile start. We're not gonna doom and gloom this exclusively. I will say on a matter of personal privilege, little Azalea is the most beautiful child I think I had ever seen. It broke my heart when I saw what happened to her, and I didn't even know her. But that little baby, if you look at her picture, you can't help but fall in love with her. So what's the one thing in your loved one that you remember that you want to share with us? Go right ahead, please.
I like to share that my son, Kobe Friday, was always smiling. If you look at every picture from kindergarten to 2 years old, he always had a great big crocodile smile on his face. And he would always say, oh, Mom, what we doing? I say, oh, well, we're going to, just have a little party. Oh, no, Mom, no. We're not having a little nothing. Mom, do it big. Do it big, Mom. Get the chairs and the tables and get the jumpers and get the balloons, Let's just do it big, for anything that we always had at our home. He would always say, do it big. So in that same spirit of doing it big, we do it big every year, the first Saturday of August of every year. We have the backpack giveaway. We load them bags up with supplies. We give out the backpacks to the children. And I have pictures and pictures and pictures of every year that we have been doing this. Amen. Not only that, we give out the toys. We do it big. We give them scooters and trucks and dolls and all kind of toys. The toys just start coming from everywhere. And I was like, in the spirit of doing it big, we give back. And one year, Pastor Rufus Turner had a conference called My Pain is My Purpose. And that's the same year my son was executed by Officer David Wells.
Say his name.
And I didn't know the Lord was getting me ready, preparing me for what was going to happen, and how do you turn your pain into purpose? How do you turn your pain into power to be able to help someone else go through what you've been through? And not only that, the laws are written.
Let me pause you right there, because that's perfect. That's perfect. You just told us what the theme of this whole panel is, turning pain into power. Talk to us, folks. The question that was asked is about the thing that brings you a smile. I saw a little half a smile over here, so I'm going to ask you to share what made you give that little half smile. And then to the specific point that was just raised, how have you been turning your pain into power?
My Antoine was a big boy at birth, 11 pounds. So ever since he was a young buck, all the way until he became 7 feet tall, this little boy to a man, Mama, can I get a hug?
Amen.
And as large as his mother is, when he got of age, he was able to lift his mother every time he walked in the room. And if he walked in the room 3 times that day, coming and checking on his mama, my baby boy lifted me up until the day he died. And that makes me smile, because I know what love is, because my son is Antoine Burries. I took that, and the fact that he never wanted me to cry, and I'll be darned if I get in public and let those people that assassinated my child see me cry. And it was from that point that I said, Stephanie Haddon, put your head up. Do this with no tears. You can cry at home, but when you stand and be that voice for that boy that never wanted his mama to cry and protected you with his life, you handle the business. And you bet not have a tear in your eye. Mama, don't cry. I still feel his hand. Mama, don't cry. And that is my power from that day forward.
Amen. Amen. Anyone else want to share on that? We have a couple of other questions as well, but anything you want to share that brings a smile to your face? Mom, which one? Yes, please. Hand her the mic. If there's one over there. If not, I'll hand her mine. Thank you.
Soraya, she had a smile that turn any bad day into a good day. Her smile, her eyes would just draw you in. You know, ever since she was little, she was my nurse. When I was sick with my migraines, she would tell her dad and her brothers, "You guys be quiet. Mom's sick." And she would always make sure that they were quiet. She was our glue. She was everyone's baby in the family, you know. She was spoiled. And she always made sure that we knew that she loved us. And the one thing that keeps me going and pushing and fighting and living is that Soraya knew she was loved by all of us. Me, her dad, her brothers, her cousins, her aunts, everyone. She knew she was loved. There was not a day that went by that she did not know she was loved. She knew, she felt it. She shared locations with us. And I would be at work and she would show up at work telling me she's here, and I'm like, "Here where?" And she would just show up, or if I was at lunch, she would look at my location and call me, and she would ask me, "Where are you?" I'm like, "At work." She's like, "Well, why are you in the mall?" And I was like, "I'm at lunch." She's like, "Well, can you go to this store for me and go get this for me?" And she would send me a picture. But it was just everything about her since she was born, you know. She had us all wrapped around her finger, you know. Even though I was the no parent and her dad was the yes parent, she knew that if she wanted something, she was gonna get it, you know. But just the fact that she knew every day she was loved, she never had to question it, that keeps me going.
Love it, love it.
I want to piggyback off that love thing, because my son, affectionately known as BJ, was one of the most loving young men that I've ever met. I'll never forget being raised in the Church of God in Christ, real strict Pentecostal church. I didn't know how to dance because they taught us we were going straight to hell. Would not pass go to not collect $200, so I never learned how to dance. And so my son was so gregarious, and he refused to obey what I had to refrain from. And I didn't know that he could dance the way he danced until we did his wedding. And the night of his wedding, we had a bachelor party. I had a conference the night before the wedding, and so it was about 15 preachers in a suite. Us old guys, okay?
That's a different kind of bachelor party, brother.
But wait, this is the crazy part. He brought his entire wedding party to crash the party in my suite. They left their party to come to our party because we had a little more food. And I tell you, that was the most loving and engaging and exciting night that I can remember with all of his friends and all of my friends together. And you can only imagine the OGs dropping knowledge to the young guys. Oh, it was wild. I can't tell you the content of it.
Please don't.
Because it might be R-rated, maybe, but anyway. But I will never forget how much of a leader and a loving kid he was. And one last thing, you didn't want to have a party without inviting him, because he was always so.
I'm gonna turn the corner as I hand the mic to Stevante, because Stevante has shared with us and the entire Clark family, there's not a classier group of people who I know than the Clark family members who I've met. And they've taken their pain and haven't just dwelled in it, but they've transformed it into so many things that many of us are familiar with. Stevante, can you talk for a minute about the same question we posed to everybody else, something that makes you smile when you think about your brother? And then, what has inspired you to do as much as you have done on behalf of our community? Not only you, but your entire family has been committed to this. Talk about it, if you will, for a minute.
I'm gonna start what inspired me. What inspired me is getting a text message from my little sister, little Papa dead. You know, after that, I was like, oh, I can't be quiet, I can't be silent. I know how people forget about our loved ones so much. I knew that I had to be loud. I had to make sure my voice was heard. If anybody gonna speak up for my brother, it's gonna be me. I seen how they did Trayvon and Mike Brown. I seen, so when I was ringing the bell on Don Lemon, I don't know if some of y'all seen that CNN interview, or whether I'm jumping on the mayor's dais, I don't know if some of y'all seen that, or I'm leading protests, shutting down streets, which I've done countless and numerous times. Couldn't tell you how many times I've shut down traffic and freeways and basketball games, and yeah, so I'm inspired because I don't want to see, I don't want this stage to get longer. You know, I don't want nobody to go through what I'm going through. I don't want nobody to be in these shoes. I wouldn't wish these shoes on my worst enemy. I'm in a prevention game, you know. How do we prevent these things, you know? How do we prevent Stephans? So, you know, what I miss about Stefan, what I remember about Stefan, was so funny about Stefan. Stefan was love and light, yeah. I didn't really hang out with Stefan like that because he was a little bit younger, and he was a hot boy, you know. He was lit. He was lit. You know what I mean? He was for the streets. You know what I mean? I never start going out until actually after he died and all that. You know, but they say, you know, sometimes, you know, you got to go through certain things in life, you know, to really understand your calling and whatnot. And, you know, Stefan was just a comedian. He was just, you know, everybody loved him. He was an athlete. You know, everybody just loved Stefan. Nobody liked me. Nobody still likes me. But it's all love. Everybody love everybody. But, oh, yeah, right. Yeah. He used to kick me out of his church. No, I love you. No, that's my guy. But, yes, that was Stefan. Stefan was just great. Thank you, brother.
Love you, man. So last few minutes, I want to go to Curtis on this one, because I've never met a person who was incarcerated for as long as Curtis was incarcerated, came into the prison system as a teenager not knowing how to read and write, taught himself how to read and write, and now if you look on TED Talks, if you Google this man's name, he has over 10 million hits. And this is the most amazing thing, and I'm going to say this straight up to my dear brother. This man has shown thoughtfulness all through his incarceration on a level, I will say, even superior to some members of my family. Every Father's Day, I would get a card from this man. Every Christmas, my wife, every Mother's Day, would get a Mother's Day card. He would paint and he would send us pictures. He was surprised when he came to my house for the first time. I pulled all that stuff out like a parent. I kept all that. Y'all smiling. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I kept all that stuff. And how do you take wrongful incarceration? It took a lot for us to figure out the strategy, and he was on the point of that. I can't even take credit. He was on the point of figuring out the strategy, which ultimately got him released after a long battle. How do you take all that pain and turn it into what you're doing now? Describe it a little bit in terms of what you're doing now. We'll talk more about it later, but how do you take that pain and turn it into power?
First, I just want to say thank you for being here. I've only been home for 4 months, so things have been a bit, thank you, I appreciate that. Things have been it's been the greatest time of my life and also the challenging time. Everything is new. every single thing. And so I came home in a way that I didn't really expect, but coming home to society with the knowledge that I got, seeing what I'm seeing, I don't know, I guess I had more expectations about what I was coming home to. I kind of expected, like, when I got out, so like studying in prison was like this safe haven that like I found based on me being illiterate. And it's weird because when I listen to every one of you up here talk today, like everything that you guys have said, that you have experienced, when I was a young person, I played a role in some form of that pain in some form of fashion. So like, I went to prison, but I wasn't innocent, right? I went to prison because I grew up a product of my environment and led me down a pathway to harming other people. Now, there's no excuse in harming other people, but in order to understand, for me to stop harming people, you gotta know why I'm doing it. So like, when I see officers killing kids and killing black people and black people killing black people, it's crazy because it's like, that's all the stuff that I did growing up and thought was cool. Like, I thought that like harming people was how you got out what you got out. I never thought like harming you would bother you this long. I didn't think that like your whole life, if I like, because like I couldn't eat or like because I didn't have food, I didn't think that if I hit your son over the head and he died because I was hungry, that you would be mad your whole life. If I had thought that, I never would have done that. So like, what I'm trying to get people to understand is like, there's no excuse for like the things that I've done in my life, especially when I see like people, the young lady crying after all this time. Like, I never could imagine. So how did I turn it into pain? It was like, what can I do to make amends for all the pain that I caused in the lives of all these people, including my own family? Because even though I was a perpetrator of a crime, how you guys feel about your family members is how my family felt about me as a kid going to prison. And that's the truth of the story, just as much as it's true as the crimes that I did to harm the people that I did. Like my family, my mom felt like you felt about me. And my mom was a crack addict, and she and my grandmother, and I grew up in the heart of the crap epidemic, and the family structure was so bad, yet my mom still cared about me when I went to prison, after all she'd been through. So when I look at the struggles of the parents, after everything they go through, I think like, wow, that's the exact thing that I put my mom through, and I never would have done it if I'd have known that neither. So on neither side, I never understood the pain that I caused the families for the stuff that I did. So for me, I believe that financial education was the cause to why I did the things that I did in my life and why I believe the things that I believe as a black man growing up in Oakland, California. And everything around me was always financially motivated, whether it was criminally, not criminally, or whatever. So in prison, crime was this really motivating factor that I didn't want to do anymore. So the idea was to develop a platform where I could be in prison and could decide that I didn't want to do crime anymore. And hopefully people will support this idea that a person in prison for robbery, murder can somehow, some way grow up to be called a financial guru, go figure. The very thing I went to prisons for is the very thing I specialize in helping people do. So like, how did you turn it into pain? Now it's been about how do I educate people, black people for sure, but people in the ways of how do we get the officer who sees the kid in the backyard to be compassionate before policy, right? Like, how do I get the prison guard who was kicking me in my head, right, pulling the bag over my head, so some of the experience that your family, I've experienced by the hands of guards inside, how do I still have compassion for that man after he did that to me? So Financial empowerment, emotional literacy was a platform that I built around economics and emotions and how to get people to understand how do you see people like humans and how do we take the funding around that and get people to spend money properly to help our communities. It's a lot more to it than that, but I'm just kind of giving you guys this kind of a brief synopsis about like my story and what my purpose to power has been.
And you're going to hear more about it. We have a few more minutes. We want to make sure we share with the audience. One of the things that everyone up here represents is not everyone lost their loved one to law enforcement. Not everyone lost their loved one to one aspect or another aspect. There's a whole variety of stories. And one thing I kind of heard, I don't want to mishear something, but I kind of heard not too long ago somebody say, well, you know, that's just the price we pay for who we be. No, it's not. No, it shouldn't be. No human being should have to accept that their babies are going to be killed or their father for knocking on the wrong door. My father-in-law passed away from Alzheimer. And before he passed away, he was knocking on everybody's wrong door. He didn't know which way was home. And he got in the wrong car. He knocked on the wrong doors. Luckily, he lived in a neighborhood where everybody knew him and they brought him home safely. But if he wasn't in that neighborhood, he could have been killed for something as simple as knocking on a door. We can't accept that as our community. So the last thing I want to ask, and then I want to open it up, is our legal community letting our community down? Is our political community letting our community down? Is our so-called justice system letting our community down? What would you suggest that we do? I know for a fact in this man's case, we had to struggle for a very long time to change a law which made it possible for him to get out of prison. That took a long time. I know in this man's case, we stood shoulder to shoulder in Sacramento City first, and then at the state capitol. I took a behind-the-scenes role there. He was up front to change state law. What do you suggest that we do as a community? Has the community, in your opinion, stood with you in terms of demanding the changes that our community needs? And if not, what would you suggest that we as a community do to prevent something like this from happening again? Let me start all the way on the end over here, if you all would answer that. What do you think?
We need to defund the police. They should pay.
No, that's real. Talk about it.
They need to pay their own thing. If they want to do all this and do all that, pay people, family members, they can figure out how they can get money. Because ain't we paying their taxes and stuff?
Let me tell you why, you know, I was in favor, and I'll say it publicly. I think people in here who know me know I was on my radio show calling for defund the police. And I had a lot of people who took issue with that. How could you say that? That's being irresponsible. That's being this, that's being that. I said, let me tell you something. And I'm looking because I think it was one of the families up here, and I'm going to see it in just a minute, had a family member who was experiencing, I think it was Marshall Miles' family. Was it Marshall Miles' family that had him going through kind of an emotional and mental process that led in part to his? We've had families in our community where we can't call the police if they're having a bad situation. In fact, the last people you want to call is the police, because you basically are putting them in a position where it's going to be a killing that could result in what other communities can do and depend on the police to get them the services that they need. So your call to defund the police is something that our community shouldn't moonwalk away from. We need to see what that means. Now, some would say, what do you replace it with? Maybe counselors and but defund the police ain't a bad place to start as far as I'm concerned. Bishop?
I just want to say, I think our legal community, our media, and many of our organizations, we have to move away from only giving attention, resources to the cases that Ray Charles can see and Stevie don't have to wonder about. Because there are many cases, much like my son's, that was not so obvious. The original narrative was that he drove off, but nobody, the investigation from the DA came long after many of the attorneys and the powers that be decided they weren't going to look into that case because there was no video. We have to take every case serious and put energy into the death of every young man, regardless of what is seen on surface.
And young woman, of course.
And young woman. And take a look at it, because the presupposition, as far as I'm concerned, is that the police shoot first, ask questions later, knowing that the DA and the legal system is going to back the police. That is a presupposition. There was the DA in Ventura County said this. He said this to me, said this to a pastor friend of, a white pastor friend of mine. In uncertain terms, I will never prosecute a policeman.
That's real. That's real.
Okay, that's what I want to know too, because my dad was having a mental health episode too. He has schizophrenia. That's me. So I want to, like, and then like people were saying like, oh, he brought it on himself. How he could have just listened, or he could have just did this. I want to ask, like, how could you stop, you want to say resisting, when somebody's pinching you, tasing you, hurting you, and you cannot breathe? Who would not want to move so they can breathe? That's not resisting.
How many of these cases do we have to see where the person is trying to, and it's not just white cops on black folks. We saw in Tennessee, we saw, so it's institutionally something's wrong, and it's the culture of oppressive behavior towards those of us who are being oppressed, but then we have oppressed behavior on other oppressed behavior, kind of what Curtis was talking about. Things that we do that have consequence on innocent folk. It's like, wait a minute, don't tell me that that's the cost of living in the hood. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. It's not the cost of living in the hood that somebody's going to lose their loved one on what I consider to be a humbug. So what is our alternative to that, y'all? What do you think? I love what this young lady said, where she said, he had a mental impairment. That shouldn't be a death sentence. Back to Bishop's son, and then I'm going to turn the mic over. Even if your kid took off, it's not a death sentence. He wasn't taking off barreling as a threat to folks. He was aiming his car like in Charleston. He wasn't doing that. If he was doing, he was trying to get away, which seems pretty natural to me. So at a point, we got to stop and think about it. We cannot first think it's their fault. What they did, they got what they deserved. That's a problem for our community that I hope will drop and leave. I know his brother. First thing I heard from people, well, he was breaking into cars. I said, first of all, that's allegedly. Second of all, breaking into a car shouldn't result in a death sentence. Let's go. Anyhow, let me turn the mic over.
You know, Stevante always says we have to build a bridge between law enforcement and the community. You know, Soraya was killed due to community gun violence. And Soraya wasn't from the streets. You know, her dad and I, we come from two different worlds. I was a military brat, you know. Her dad could only teach her and her brothers things I can't teach that happens in the streets. So her dad, with all three of our kids, taught them about what happens in the streets and the consequences of what happens in the streets. What we also need to do to change law enforcement, we need to change our community. We have too many parents out here trying to be the friend instead of the parent. We have parents that don't want the elders of the community to discipline or guide and teach their children a better way, that they don't have to be the statistic and repeat the pattern that they see. Come on. You know, I have two older sons. Their father made sure that they didn't run the streets, that he made sure our daughter didn't get caught up in the streets. So these kids don't have to repeat what they see, what they know. You know, take back our community. Let the community, let your elders teach and guide your kids. Stop telling people, you can't talk to my kid, you can't check my kid. Well, if your kid is over here bullying and doing this and doing that, harming another kid, someone needs to teach your kid that's wrong.
Amen.
Because when we're little, from the time we're little, we're taught right from wrong. You either get a spanking or some parents put their kid on timeout. You did wrong, this is the consequence of it. As you get older, there's still a consequence to what you do. When parents know that their child harmed another human being, whether it's their peers, I don't care if the parent knows your child, your young or a young adult child killed another human being, and you steadily are quiet about it, hiding and protecting your child, you're wrong.
Let me go right there. Let's give a round of applause on that. I promise 2 more minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions. But to your point, I check kids all the time. I do, because I'm old school. I'm not afraid, number one, but more importantly, it's because I love them with all my heart. I feel your child right here looking at his eyes and looking at your eyes. I feel my sisters from Stockton right here. I love our people. I love them. So up to this point, and this man knows me, this man's known me almost my whole life, that hasn't wound up in the wrong situation, because the first thing I do is I say, look, I respect you. This is not coming at you from a disrespectful place. And second, I love you. I don't want to see harm come to you. So y'all stop doing whatever it is that you're doing that can lead to harm. If I had seen him when he was young in East Oakland, I had other kids in East Oakland I reached out to all those years ago. I probably would have reached out to him and maybe came into contact with him when he was a kid growing up. We got to love our own, folks, and we got to quit being so scared. Since when did we get so scary that we can't check a kid up? Oh, I don't want to do that. That kid may hurt me. That kid, maybe. But the only hope we have as a community is if we love it enough and respect it enough to check up. Your point is dead on. Last 2 points right here. My sister from Stockton. I got 2 Stocktons who are going to finish us off.
You know what, when we talk about community and our kids, sometimes we gotta understand that these children are misdirected
Amen.
from the inside out.
Amen.
So for them to get out there and face this world with a mother that is not present and a father that's present, but he doing what he do. When that child is hungry, he goes on instinct. So when we talk about the family dynamics, we can't blame that child. Every child know right from wrong, but if you hungry and you ready to eat,
That's real.
I'm gonna feed me, because mama ain't doing it and daddy ain't thinking about it. And I learned this from my youth. As far as the community, they need to step up. We can sit behind on the porches and we can get on FB and IS and talk. But what contribution? When we want to say, let's unite, let's deliver a message for these youngsters to hear, everybody want to sit back behind closed door. The legal system gonna eat them up. It's corruption all through there. So if we don't intervene as a lit village, as we call it in Stockton, you know, we are going to lose them, because once they get in them courts,
Absolutely.
they gonna railroad them. I seen
That's
them.
real.
They gonna
For
commit
life.
illegal crimes that DA and everybody else and our boys is going. I got a grandson doing 28 years for a murder he never committed. 28 years, because the way they finagled it, it was either you take a L or you take this here. There's no representation.
Amen.
But we have to unite as we call ourselves parents. It doesn't matter that this is not my son. Then he's my grandson.
Come
then
on.
I just claimed him.
Amen.
And I want to make a way so that when he get ready to drop his seeds, that I've set up in my community, made a path, and let these young people know they can come to us. Because they're not going to come to us if all we do is down talk them. You have to be open to these young people.
Amen.
Because I'm going to tell you something, you do not know their trauma or their pain. They deserve us to give them something other than what they've never had.
Come on. Come on.
And I'm a believer in that. And as far as this judicial system, I cannot appreciate videos. I watched my son get assassinated, and there are no charges. So what good is that video? You gave me that as a substitute to pacify me. Twani's dead, and you saying what I see out of these dang near 70-year-old eyes, that a boy just got assassinated by 3 police. In fact, the police that killed her son killed my son.
Oh.
Imagine that. We have to stop criticizing. We have to leave the opinions alone and understand, yes, if the boy got a pistol in the house, let him have it. But don't you dare judge that child. Because if no one is there to pay attention, how you gonna know his story? You can't tell his story if you don't know him. But what you can do is say, young man, come here, let me holler at you.
That's real. Yeah. You have to.
And do it with kindness and make him feel like he got little value. And that's what I'm doing in Stockton. And I'm shaking in my boots because I don't know if he carrying a pistol, but I know every time I walk away, I leave with a hug.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Ain't no more room to blame. We all guilty of something.
Amen.
We all lacked in something. And it generated down to our children. There is no perfection, and that come from big boy upstairs.
Woo! Let me let the last word be from my sister in the middle from Stockton. We got Stockton bookends here to give us the last word if she's willing to do it. I tell you, I am glad that this panel came together. You're going to run out and tell folks who weren't here that they should have been here. We're going to share the video from this because I'm sitting up here getting fired up and getting re-energized. I'm getting fed by all these panelists up here. And it is Stevante who did that. Let's give Stevante a round of applause. I'm going to let you have the last word, then we're going to open it up.
I want to piggyback off of Bishop because the narrative was, oh, he was running from police. Oh, he was domestic violence this. Oh, he was doing that. They made 3 different lies, like in minutes of executing my son.
That's right.
And then when it came all the way down to it, I just want to let you guys know that my son was the wrong person.
Oh.
It was a mistaken identity. My son hadn't did anything. He had been with us with a revival. He had been in church with us. His daughters danced off of the song in the dance praise team. He was there at the church, all that, but they sit up and demise my son and said he this and he was that, but he was in none of that. And then finally they say, oops. Silva, the spokesperson for Stockton PD, says, oops, well, he was the wrong person. And then a few months later, because I'm doing a people's investigation, because I can't get a real investigation, so I'm doing a people's investigation. My family, we do an investigation to find out that the person, the guy, the Troy, whoever, Sam, Blue, Jay, he was already arrested and locked up, incarcerated in jail when they killed my son. And they want to know why I walked the streets. And they want to know why I was screaming. And they want to know why I was standing up, because I am Kobe Friday. I am Kobe Friday. That's my baby, the baby that was in my womb that I birthed, that I took care of for him for 29 years. And my husband, they all grew up with my husband in the household. And he gave all the sons the same talk. Hold your hands up. When you're driving, don't make no fictitious moves. Don't do this, don't do that. Don't reach for the glove compartment. Don't walk away. Don't.
It doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter. They still execute our babies.
That's real.
And I just wanted to say that because that's why I am Kobe Friday.
Come on, sister.
Thank you.
So we were given an hour, we've gone over that time, but I hope that you all were okay with us going over that time. We want to answer any questions people have. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question for any of our panelists? Any comment? We're not going to take long comments, but is there any comment anybody wants to make? I want to say this, and then I'm going to hand it off. I'm ashamed of my profession. Let me say that again. I've been a lawyer for 42 years. I always wanted to be a lawyer. When I was a little kid and this man knew me when we were 15-year-olds, I told him then I wanted to be a lawyer, and he was already preaching. So we knew what we wanted to do, but I'm ashamed of my profession. My colleague Ben Crump talks about no justice for us. We have to demand more. It's both within the system, but it's also within our community. We can't tolerate our community members being victimized by some of this behavior. Now, how we deal with it is a different matter. Some of it's got to be punitive, because I'm old school. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Where's Pastor Porter? But I also believe in restoration. This man has been restored. I've witnessed it. We can't sacrifice anybody in our community. To be able to take a person who's gone through what he's gone through, and you saw how strong he was in admitting what he had done, and still transform that into something that he and I are working on, trying to promote it through the entire state and hopefully the country. That's how you do this thing. And there's nowhere we won't go. There's nowhere that we won't go. We're not afraid of our own. I'm not, and I know he's not. So I visited him in San Q. They did an interview with me. I'm just going to say this because he remembers. I'm laughing already. He laughing. They did an interview, like these cameras here. San Q got a whole operation thanks to this man and some of his folks. And they said, what's the one thing you fear coming in here to San Quentin? I said, dying? This is a prison. You know what you mean, what do I fear? But I didn't let that stop me, Bishop. And he and I did a lot of work together. So with that said, we love you because you are our community. I have never heard a panel this impressive on this topic before. What's that? Oh, absolutely. Stevante just whispered in my ear and reminded me of something that I'm one of the sponsors of. I want him to make the announcement, but we love y'all. We appreciate you for joining us. We love each one of you as well, and we appreciate you coming. And with that said, let me hand it back over to Stevante Clark.
Y'all make some noise for Attorney Mark Harris, y'all. You know, that was a powerful discussion he had to moderate. And I just want to say, May 14th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., we're having a brunch at Stefan's house for impacted mothers. And we're going to have flowers and food and candles and everything for the mothers, you guys know. And I just want to have the community come support, if y'all can. Make a donation to our Mother's Brunch, help get these mothers some flowers and candles and good food and everything else. Thank you all for joining this panel, and make a good round of applause for our mothers of the movement and our families of the movement. All right. Thank you. DJ, y'all got some music for Pastor Porter as he come up here? Because I hope he don't kick us out of church for going overtime. That's our guy. This is the #1 NAN chapter in all of NAN history, you guys. The West Coast, Sacramento, California version. Make some noise for Dr. Takoy Porter, y'all.
I really want you to really clap it up for these panelists here, these families, their testimonies, and for doing and sharing their stories. Come on, let's put your hands together for them. Really, come on, can we just stand up and applaud? It takes lots of courage.